My name is Patricia McDonough Dunn. I am the chair of the board here at the Maine Irish Heritage Center, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you as we celebrate the center's 10th annual Claddagh Award. This building, the former St. Dominic's Church, was an early hub of the Irish community here in Maine. After the church was closed in 1997, the building was purchased by the city of Portland, and in 2003, it was gifted by the city to the Maine Irish Heritage Center. Our mission is to preserve, protect, and restore this building, to provide a meeting place for Maine's diverse communities, to share their cultural experience, and to promote Irish culture, history, and heritage by telling the story of the Irish in Maine. We house the Maine Irish Genealogical Center, which includes a large DNA project, and our resident genealogist, the Joseph E. Brennan Archives, a library with a large collection of books and papers on the Irish. We also facilitate and coordinate with what we call the Maine Irish Network, other groups and organizations that promote Irish culture, heritage, and history, including our founding partner, the Irish American Club, the Ancient Order of Hibernians, the Claddagh Pipe Band. We were supposed to have a piper here tonight, but unfortunately the weather was so cold that it was not feasible, so I'm sorry we were not able to deliver on that. And other groups that are part of this organization. So out of our mission of promoting Irish culture, heritage, and history, and our need to raise funds to carry out our mission was born this event. The Claddagh is a beloved symbol to people of Irish descent and represents the ideal of friendship, love, and loyalty. The award is presented to a person of Irish descent who has dedicated his or her life to service within the Maine community. When you look at the list of individuals we have honored previously, you will see that they have come from all across Maine, from all walks of life, and they have all made great contributions to Maine in various ways. Tonight, we gather to celebrate this year's honoree, whose dedication and service to the people of Maine, along with her Irish heritage, certainly makes her an outstanding recipient of the award. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our 2017 Claddagh Award recipient, Senator Susan Collins. I would like to recognize the previous recipients of the Claddagh Award who are here this evening with us. Bill Ryan and his wife Peg. Jim Wellahan and his wife, Kathy. I would also like to thank the members of the board of the Maine Irish Heritage Center, both past and present, for their dedication and hard work. And I ask that the past and present board members that are here please stand to be recognized. As I'm sure you're aware, an event like this does not happen without the work of a lot of dedicated people. Other than our executive director, Vinnie O'Malley, we relied on a large group of volunteers to plan and organize this event. I want to extend my thanks for all the time and effort all of you have put into making this evening successful. From the folks who manned the registration table to the people who guided everyone through the center. There are just too many of you to name, but we do want to extend our thanks to all of you. I also want to extend our thanks to Senator Collins' staff, who have been wonderful to work with and have also helped us make this evening very special. I want to welcome a distinguished guest who is here with us this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce the Consul General of Ireland from the consulate in Boston, Fionnuala Quinlan. She and her staff at the consulate in Boston have provided us with resources and support, and we're delighted she was able to attend this evening. And I invite her up to say a few words for us.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always such a pleasure to be here. I think this is my third time being at this dinner, and it's just always lovely. I'm particularly delighted to be here this evening, of course, as we honour Senator Collins. And I was absolutely thrilled to meet your lovely mum, Mrs. Pat Collins, earlier. Senator, I know that you're fourth generation Irish, and Patricia was telling me earlier that you've come to the centre and talked about your history in the past. But I was really interested to learn that your first job was potato picking. Because as many of you who are Irish know, this is, or was at least, a real rite of passage for Irish kids or students who were kind of, not too young to work in the formal labour sector. But as you can imagine, it's very physical work. It demands huge reserves of strength and determination, qualities, of course, that you've demonstrated throughout your career. And I have to tell you, I'm a little bit ashamed to tell you this actually, but I did it once and I lasted a day. But for 20 years as Senator, you've provided great leadership to and advocacy on behalf of the people of Maine. Your name is absolutely synonymous with courage and bipartisanship, and I think we can all agree that those are qualities that are needed now more than ever. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you this evening as you're honoured with the Claddagh Award. I'm sure, Senator Collins, that generations ago your ancestors came here in search of a better life, and of course we know that generations of Irish people fled poverty and often hunger in search of a better life. But like Senator Collins, so many went on to achieve the American dream and to enrich their homeland beyond measure. So that we know that today there are 33 million members of the Irish-American family here in the US. We count police officers, firefighters, doctors, entrepreneurs, artists, senators, mayors. And I think, when we reflect upon that, we really need to think about what the exiled children of Ireland have created and achieved, and it's quite astounding. And I'm always struck by it in all my work here in New England. And it's true, of course, that our people are our great assets. In Ireland, we don't have many natural resources. We don't have diamonds or, gas or oil much to a large degree, but we have wonderful people. And I'm very fortunate to have met so many of you here of Irish heritage today. So really, today I just want to pay particular tribute not only to the Maine Irish Heritage Centre, but also to all of you gathered here who do so much to promote Irish culture, including our music, our song, our literature, our traditional sports. You may know there's a little game happening in Fenway next Sunday. We have hurling is going to take over Fenway again next Sunday, and there's going to be about 30,000 people there. And actually our All-Ireland champions are going to be playing, so it's going to be an absolutely stunning display of sport. So any of you are kind of knocking around free on the 19th of November, I'd recommend you go. But I just want to say a special word of thanks to all of you as the custodians of our culture for passing it on to the next generations and helping to ensure that our heritage and our traditions continue. As Patricia mentioned earlier, I'm very proud that the Irish Government continues to support the Main Irish Heritage Centre, and again this year we were able to present them with a cheque a little earlier. And that really is to support Patricia and Vinnie and all of the volunteers that work so hard to keep the Irish flame burning here in the great state of Maine. So I'm really struck constantly by the warmth and breadth of the links between our two countries and the great warmth that characterises our relationship. I've heard it said that Americans love two countries, not with a sense of divided loyalties, but with great patriotism and regard for the contribution that Ireland has made to the US and that the US makes to Ireland. And I have to say, I've always found it to be that way. So let me finish once again just by thanking you, all of you of Irish ancestry, with your Irish connections or simply a passion for Ireland, for contributing so greatly to our story and for keeping our relationship so very strong. And I wish you a wonderful evening here this evening. Gur míle maith agaibh.
I just told the senator that when you're asked to do an invocation after you've all eaten, it's a much harder prayer. Food is much more cooperative before you eat it, you know. Let us pray. We pray, loving God, this evening, reflecting on our appreciation of the wonderful heritage grounded in our Irish roots that you have given to us. Our ancestry has given so much help in sharing with us the important values that we need in order to live meaningful and fulfilling lives. Gathering here each year, to honor someone with our Claddagh Award, who not only lives a meaningful and fulfilling life, but works so hard that others might share those gifts as well, brings great joy and pride to all of us. Honoring our senior senator from the great state of Maine, Senator Susan Collins, tonight brings happiness not only to her and her family, but to all of us. Loving God, we thank you for this. Senator Collins, we pray together this evening with you and with your family, that God will keep deepening your awareness of your many gifts he asks you to share. We pray he gives you the increased strength that is required to do your difficult job these days. Finally, we ask God to give you the courage to continue making the hard and the difficult choices for those greatest in need. At this time, I'd invite all of you to extend your right hand with me in this direction. For you, Senator Collins, one from the county with Irish lineage on both sides of your family, and also a great potato picker. To you, the great senator who has never missed a roll call vote. To you, the most bipartisan senator in the country for the last 4 years. And to you, this year's Claddagh Award, we ask God to bless you, and we bless you too. Amen.
So before we start the formal program tonight, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to recognize another distinguished guest who is in attendance this evening, and that guest is Patricia Collins. While she is Senator Collins' mother, and that is a distinguished role in and of itself, she is also a very accomplished woman of Irish descent in her own right. She has served her community and the state of Maine as the mayor of Caribou, a trustee of the University of Maine system, and has served on more local and state boards than I have time to list. As Jack McCormick, who was chair of the board of this center in its early days, and his wife Cindy come forward to present some flowers to Pat Collins, please join me in recognizing Patricia Collins. Thank you, Jack and Cindy. So now to our program. As is our custom, we start with showing a video about our recipient. This year's video runs a little bit longer than usual because there were some folks who could not attend this event who wanted to send their tributes to the senator via video, so they are included in it. At the conclusion of the video, we'll have a couple of speakers, but in the meantime, enjoy the video.
Folks, sorry I can't be there with you tonight in person, but Susan will tell you, people say I quote Irish poets all the time when I was in the Senate as Vice President. They think I do it because I'm Irish, but that isn't true. It's because the Irish are the best poets. And there's a line from a poem written by Seamus Heaney, Susan, that reminds me of you. And it's called The Cure at Troy. And the line goes like this. It says, "History teaches us not to hope on this side of the grave, but then once in a lifetime, that longed-for tidal wave of hope and history rhyme." Susan, you like me, you believe there's a chance of making hope and history rhyme, and you've never given up on pursuing that. You've never forgotten why you came to the Senate as a staffer back in 1975. You're a woman who embodies sacrifice for your country and public service, but you all know Susan well. There's not much more I can tell you about her except I'm crazy about her, and that's why you're giving her the Claddagh Award, named after a symbol that represents some of the best traits we associate with Irishness: love, loyalty, and friendship. And I'd say one more: courage. My mom used to say, "Remember, Joey, you're defined by your courage and you're redeemed by your loyalty." She could have been looking in your eyes, Susan, and not mine. I've been lucky enough, Susan, to call you a friend for a long, long time, and for years back, we've been hanging out together. A few years back, we were both honored as Irish Americans of the Year by the American Ireland Fund, and there's no one I would have rather shared that honor with, because we share more than just a common ancestry. We share a core set of values. And Susan, I know you well. It all starts with your belief that my father constantly repeated to us: everyone is entitled to be treated with dignity. That's how you treat everyone. We've been friends for a long time. I trust you. Everyone trusts you. You always put the country first. You're always ready to provide the necessary resources for our first responders, for the International Violence Against Women Act, anyone who's oppressed. Susan, I describe you as a woman of incredible character, integrity, and grace. And, I know we come technically from political backgrounds that are different, but they're not very different. We've become fast and good friends. And I look forward to you continuing to lead in the United States Senate, Susan. An expression I was given credit for, it said, we Irish are the only ones who are nostalgic about the future. Well, I'm nostalgic about your future. It's a long way to go. You have a lot more to give. I want to congratulate you, Susan. You've earned this honor. And I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of the evening. Thank you, and Susan, I'll see you soon, okay?
Did you say you're from the county where the sparkling rivers shine? Did I hear you say you're from the county, then you must know this friend of mine, where your eyes can see forever through the sky so big and blue. Did you say you're from the county?
My father is part Irish. My mother is more so. In fact, my mother's maiden name is Patricia Rosaline Catherine McGuigan.
That qualifies.
I think so. and obviously she married a Collins.
Yeah.
So we're not quite sure when family members came over or our genealogy, but my mother's father was Irish, and so she's about half Irish.
You talked about how excited your mom is about this award being given to you.
She really is. My mother is extremely proud of her Irish heritage. She did this needlework for me in 1981, and I've had it hanging wherever I've lived ever since. The Irish Americans in the state of Maine have had an extraordinary impact.
Tend to get involved in politics, which is like the family business for a lot of Irishmen.
If you look at the contributions in the legislature and our governors and our members of Congress, the Irish are disproportionately represented.
What do you think it is about the temperament or the personality of the Irish that makes them want to be in public service?
All of us tended to be raised in families where we were taught the importance of getting involved. And after all, if you look at the history of the Irish, it's a tough one. And one way to ensure fair treatment is to be involved in politics and government. And I remember a lesson that my parents taught me, and that is that if you're not willing to get involved, if you stay on the sidelines, you have no right to complain. And you know, we Irish are known to express our viewpoints, and to lose that right was something that was just not acceptable to me.
Well, that clearly had an influence on you and the path that you took in life.
It definitely did. I was very fortunate at home to have strong role models of public service in both my mother and my father.
It's an amazing history. Her mother and father both served as mayors of Caribou. Her father was a state senator. Her mother, Pat, was the chair of the board of the University of Maine system, as was her brother Sam. Her brother Greg was the chairman of the community foundation up there in the Northern Maine Community College. They have been involved in so much. Her mother was the chairman of the Catholic Charities Board. They just wherever you look, the Collins family, they have business up there that's 5 generations. Sam and Greg, her 2 brothers, have run Collins Lumber. It's a lumber and building supplies company. For 5 generations it's been run, and they run it now, and they have 5 stores throughout the county, all the way down into Lincoln. Stores are committed to community service as well as being excellent employers, providing excellent service. So they've done so much for Aroostook County, Caribou in particular, and the state of Maine.
I also think there's something to the fact that a lot of Irish families tend to be large families, and mine is one of them. I'm one of 6 children. I'm number 3. And if you grow up in a large family, you learn to compromise, you learn to share, you learn to settle disputes, and I have found that all of those skills are very valuable in the political world.
Every bill you have introduced in the Senate has had a Democrat co-sponsor. So you've earned a reputation as being perhaps the Senate's most nonpartisan member.
Senator Collins, to me, epitomizes the word class. She is a marvelous individual as far as I'm concerned. She has courage, as you know. You have to have a lot of courage to take the stands that she's taken recently in support of our country. She's very dedicated. She's proud of her Irish heritage. And she's just a wonderful lady who's committed her life to service, just like, as I said, the family has in that area.
You've been a marvelous representative of Maine in the Senate. You're 15th in seniority. That you've never missed a roll call is certainly evidence of your Maine work ethic. And yet, here in Maine, we all remember you as the girl from Caribou who made good. We've had a long tradition of Maine women being successful. Obviously, Margaret Chase Smith comes quickly to mind, and Olympia Snow, but you, Susan, you've set a new standard.
I should have known Susan Collins was Irish. Smart, tough, thoughtful, and incredibly hardworking. And by the way, this thing of never having missed a vote, that is amazing. I can tell you from having been down here and seeing how this place works and how hard it is to make it to the floor every single time, as Susan Collins has done. I can't think of a better recipient of the Claddagh Award, and I just want to congratulate her and also the Irish Heritage Center and the work that you do to keep alive that wonderful heritage of the Celtic people and of the Irish people in Maine and across the country. A wonderful, fun, festive evening, but particularly fun because of your honoring of my colleague who I'm honored to serve with, Susan Collins. A great recipient. She embodies the spirit of this award, and good on you for making this choice. Congratulations, thanks, and thanks to Susan Collins for all she does for Maine and the country as well.
I'm very proud of my Irish heritage. There's an old saying that if you're lucky enough to be born Irish, you're lucky enough.
By our hearts and hands and harrows, in this land we did remain. Now the hopes of our tomorrows are here in the crown of Maine. Did you say you're from the county where the sparkling rivers shine?
Before we go on, I just wanted to mention, and I did see it in the credits, that if you hadn't realized, that was Schooner Fair that was singing in that song. And what you may not know is that Chuck and Steve Romanoff, who are Schooner Fair, their mother was Irish, and they grew up in this neighborhood and attended church here, and they have been very loyal supporters of the center and have performed here many times. And I also want to express my thanks to Pat Callahan, whose voice you heard throughout the video, but he got edited out in the. And also, I want to also thank Dan Mahoney, who is here somewhere behind, for producing and editing all of this video. He did a great job. So now we're on to our speakers, and the first speaker is David Flanagan. I asked David what it was he would like me to say about him when I got up here, and David sent me a very long list, and I said I probably had to edit it for purposes of time. But David was born in Bangor. He told me he is descended from a family that came to America as Irish famine refugees from County Mayo. I'm sure many of you know he's had a long distinguished career in public service. He did work for Senator Collins as general counsel for the Senate Homeland Security investigation of Hurricane Katrina. And without further ado, David Flanagan.
It was really a wonderful story, and there's so much more I could have added. But this is really a special night. This is a night you can tell your grandkids you were here for something of historic significance. No, I don't mean that there's a Republican in St. Dom's. The most extraordinary thing is
You have all just heard the shortest speech Joe Biden ever gave. You heard him mention that both he and Senator Collins were honored by a bipartisan Irish-American group down in Washington. I was there. I saw what happened. There was a coin toss, and Senator Biden got to speak first. For 90 minutes, we heard about his sainted mother and the Grandma Cree about growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Senator Collins then got up with just enough time to urge people to drive carefully on the way home. But not tonight. Tonight, the spotlight shines alone on Senator Collins. And yes, she is a bona fide Irish American. As you heard on the movie, her father, Dunn, shares an extraordinary Irish name. For example, Michael Collins, the hero of the Irish Free State, was another Collins, I'm sure related somehow. And her mother, Patricia McGuigan, is the genuine article. In addition to the things you heard on the tape, you should know that she is one of her uncles was a distinguished Jesuit professor at Georgetown University, and that she contributed so much to public service here in Maine that she was one of the original people honored by the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. And more than that, she won the highest accolade any Irish maniac can hope for. For her service to church and community, she was awarded the Diocesan Immaculate Conception Medal. So here we have, following in the footsteps of other outstanding Maine Irish American leaders, including the irrepressible Jerry Conley, Joe Brennan, and George Mitchell, our immensely influential U.S. Senator Susan Collins. Like millions around the world, and Maine people of all political stripes, including some with dubious motives, I was relieved when Susan decided to stay in Washington in her modest role as perhaps the single most influential legislator in the world. Because she's the one who's held the line in this reckless and dangerous time on health care, the environment, foreign policy excesses, and what I would like to call Congress's attention to deficit disorder. But for all her accomplishments, I confess a moment of concern when I saw a photo of her at the White House seated right next to President Trump. I was hoping Ivanka wouldn't be here tonight so I could say what I thought. It looked like Trump wanted to devour her and spit out the bones and order Steve Bannon to grind them up. It takes enormous courage and fortitude, as Senator King said, to stand up to pressure from this president and keep on fighting. But Susan has it. But enough about politics in this charming day and age. Instead, I'd like to share my own insights from working with Susan on the investigation of Hurricane Katrina as to the reasons for her enduring success. What I witnessed firsthand over several months were the qualities that make her so successful in the swamp. It's true. It really is true. She works harder than almost any other senator and their staffs at all hours of the day and night, developing penetrating questions and analysis worthy of a first-class litigator. delving deeply into the testimony of witnesses by doing her homework herself, and, believe it or not, actually reading bills and reports. Her self-discipline is legendary, making all those votes come hell or high water, returning all those calls, constantly flying back and forth between Bangor and Washington, and making congressional fact-finding trips, not the ones most make to such hardship posts as London and Paris, but with her friends McCain and Graham going to fun-filled places like Kabul and Baghdad. But even more importantly, I have watched her practicing a determined collegiality with her colleagues of all persuasions and treating them with decency, respect, and genuine concern, even when that must have been kind of hard. And with that accrued goodwill, pragmatically seeking compromises that will help move the country's agenda in a constructive way. Just one more thing. She is Irish. So when she diplomatically tells you something is troubling, what she means is, it's a bloody disaster. Well, as you all know, there have been plenty of troubling developments in Washington so far this year. And Maine can be ever so proud we have sent down a senator who has the strength of character and fundamental decency to respond effectively and sometimes, when it really counted, decisively to these challenges. Congratulations, Senator, on this award. It is truly deserved. And now, it's my opportunity to introduce someone who can give his own up-close take on our senior senator. And let me introduce an absolutely unbiased observer who has made his own major contributions to public service in our state, her brother Sam. Thank you.
So David used to work for me at one time, but he wasn't supposed to steal my notes. Chair Pat Dunn, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and certainly a pleasure to be here with my sister Susan, and as she's the recipient of the Claddagh Award. And also, it's great to be celebrating with Susan on the 10th anniversary of this award, and how appropriate. Especially like to congratulate past recipients, Bill Ryan and his wife Peg, and Jim Wellahan and his wife Kathy. That's awesome. You know, when I looked at the past recipients, and I saw Joe Brennan, you know, governor and in the House of Representatives, Jerry Conley, State of Maine senator in the House legislature, George Mitchell, United States Senator and Special Envoy to Ireland and to the Middle East, all outstanding Mainers serving our nation and Maine. Politicians, Irish, and you know, we're in St. Dominic tonight, and I think of Father Martin. Miracles do happen. We have a Republican in the House that is getting the Claddagh Award. I am so proud of Susan for receiving the Claddagh Award, a symbol of love and friendship. And I've noted that many of the politicians that have been successful that are Irish have a common skill set that have enabled them to navigate the world's problems and the national problems. Preparation and a willingness to self-sacrifice. You think of successful athletes, business people, and politicians. They're all willing to put in the hard work, and Susan is no exception. I recall her days with Governor McKernan and his cabinet, or as director of the New England Small Business, or as a director of small business, the College Center for Family Business at Husson. The time that I would get a hold of Susan would be usually after 6 o'clock at her office working. Today, when I want to get a hold of Susan, I text her at 11 p.m., and I get a text back. but she is committed to her community, to the state of Maine, and to the nation. And I can attest to that directly. And of course, I don't have a biased point of view for my sister, Susan. But I can tell you her preparation started very early in her childhood. In fact, as a babysitter, the most wanted babysitter of the neighborhood, we had the children of the neighborhood paying her babysitter fees and encouraging the parents to go out so that Susan could come visit. That's how good and dedicated she was. Also, being from Aroostook County, it's a rite of passage to pick potatoes. And I want to dispel some of the notions about Susan picking potatoes. Susan did pick potatoes, and she toiled that harvest for 3 or 4 weeks for the farmer and was dedicated, getting up at 5 in the morning, being in the fields by 6 and working to when the sun set, and coming home and eating a good hearty meal and going to bed and washing up and going to bed and doing it all over again. But she also had the intellect to decide that she was going to be a librarian assistant the next year instead of picking potatoes. So that's the rest of the story. And Susan did learn the value of picking potatoes, as she's been the potatoes' biggest advocate in Congress and talking about the nutritional value of the potato, and has been the vanguard for making sure that potato is in the schools. So we thank you, Susan, from the county for that. To be prepared to serve others is a prerequisite. One of the prerequisites, of course, is to visit Ireland. And Susan spent a month while going to St. Lawrence University in Ireland. And then she went with my mother, Patricia McGuigan Collins, and Don Collins, and spent a week in Killarney. But one of the things that was particularly important to Susan was she had to get to County Cork. Because everybody knows what's in County Cork, and Cork is the Blarney Stone, right? So Susan made sure that she was imparted the powers of eloquence and persuasion by kissing the Blarney Stone, but certainly not full of Blarney. Perseverance, courage, toughness, you've heard about some of those attributes. And, you know, some looking at Susan might correctly judge Susan as a demure, kind, friendly, compassionate, helpful person. But don't be mistaken. That's not at all that constitutes Susan. She has the Irish fight for social justice, fairness, that many will never match, and those foolish enough to challenge her to a duel, Aaron Burr style, will pay the consequences. Susan is the 4th most popular senator in the United States. When Susan contemplated running for governor for the state of Maine, it was a very, very difficult choice. Mainers were split on whether she should continue to serve in the Senate or whether she should come back to Maine to represent their interests and to bring a new style of leadership to Maine. From Susan's perspective, she could continue the 16-hour-long days in Congress, fly every weekend back and forth to Washington, endure the political high-stakes pressure, or she could be in Maine, be among family and friends, be the first woman governor of this state. Well, I knew long before Susan what her choice would be. She toiled over it. It was very difficult. Should she serve the state of Maine and Mainers in the nation's capital, or should she come back to Maine as the first woman governor? Well, I knew that her choice would be to be in Washington. She would choose because she always chooses others above herself. After all, a good Irish Catholic lady would be riddled with guilt if she acted selfishly. No one could question the physical or mental toughness of Susan Collins. Intimidation, scolding, and legislative bribes would never sway Susan's vote, just as Mitch McConnell and Vice President Pence, though both attest to the toughness of the latest senator of Maine during the health care debates. Susan always has the courage of her convictions, and like many of the Irish, bullying and intimidation only make her tougher. And physically, how many legislators could keep a perfect record intact after breaking an ankle not once, but twice? Once going undetected for a year, and the other time requiring surgery. After all, Susan truly is Irish. I've often wondered, I'm sure many of you have often wondered, why hasn't the president singled out Susan for her stance against some of the Republican agenda on health care? After all, he's gone after Lisa Murkowski, John McCain, and many others. Well, some may surmise, and especially after today, that Susan's friendship with Ivanka has shielded her from the president's vitriol. But I believe that he's afraid of the Irish Republican from Maine. If you are not convinced yet that Susan is deserving of this Claddagh Award, well, I have to give you one more bit of information. Everybody, I would hope, in this room would know of Michael Collins and the stories of Michael Collins and the history of Michael Collins. But how many can say Michael Collins is my brother? Susan Collins can say Michael Collins is my brother. Susan, you're all Irish. A love of music, closeness of family, a sense of justice, ambitious, a fondness for a party, a love of words and learning, and keenness of all things spiritual. Congratulations on receiving the Claddagh Award, and please join me up here on the stage.
Thank you so much. You know, after the video and these two wonderful speeches and the wonderful blessing by Father Murray, I think I should just say, thanks, good night, have a wonderful evening. I truly am very touched. And it was wonderful to have the Consul General here tonight and to share the evening with two other Claddagh recipients, my friends Bill Ryan and Jim Wellahan. I am, however, especially pleased to recognize my mother, Pat Collins, who has traveled from Caribou to be here this evening. Though for a while I was worried that she was going to get the award instead of me, you know. And that would be well-deserved, I hasten to say. And I'm also so glad that my husband, Tom Daffron, we just did his Ancestry.com DNA, and he's 21% Irish, so we know. And in addition to my darling brother Sam, his wife Lise Collins is here tonight. Lise's maiden name is Pelletier, but I really think it's O Pelletier, you know, at least for the night. And it's wonderful to see so many friends. David, I so appreciated your speech as well. And Mert Henry, a dear, dear friend, Debbie Mann, who I've known forever, Betsy McCandless. There's just so many other friends who are here this evening. I especially want to thank my pastor from Bangor, Father Frank Murray, for traveling down from Bangor to be with us this evening. And I have to tell you, I feel strengthened by that wonderful blessing. And I thank you for all you do to keep us strong in leading the Catholic community in Bangor, Brewer, Hampden, Winterport. It goes on and on. nowadays. And of course, having that video from both Angus King, who's been a dear colleague of mine, and Joe, who's been friends for years, and I too wondered how long the video would be, but he's such a wonderful human being, and he did not hesitate about doing the video. And I know Pat Callahan remembers a certain election campaign when Joe Biden came up here and said to Pat, "I refuse to say anything negative about Susan Collins. I love her." And he certainly showed that tonight. And I thank all of you for being here. There is a traditional Irish greeting that means 100,000 welcomes. And I won't press my luck with the ancient language, so let me instead offer 100,000 thank yous to the Maine Irish Heritage Center for recognizing me tonight and the contributions of Ireland and Irish Americans to our great state, and for preserving this beautiful church that once was the center of Irish life in Portland. In fact, I understand that it even ranked ahead of the local pub in popularity. I'm afraid that famous Irish eloquence fails me in attempting to describe how honored that I am by this award. I do have the luck of the Irish. Growing up every day, I saw my parents live by the defining qualities of hard work, integrity, determination, and commitment to service. Standing tall for one's beliefs is part of my DNA, while respecting the beliefs of others is in my heart. And never have those qualities been put to more beneficial use by another Claddagh awardee, and that is our great Maine Senator, George Mitchell. Although he cannot be with us tonight, we did stay at the same hotel last night. I don't know. It sounds like a Holiday Express ad or something. And so I wondered if actually he was going to appear here this evening. But I know that although he cannot be with us tonight, that I speak for everyone in saying that the peace that he helped to bring to the land of our ancestors is among the outstanding achievements of our time. Our heritage gives us much to celebrate. As the Roman Empire fell to the barbarians, it was the Irish monks who preserved the written knowledge of the Western world and saved civilization. 13 centuries later, the Irish formed the first great wave of immigration to America. And here in Maine, they turned the wilderness into farms, laid the railroad tracks, and worked the docks. It is truly wonderful that Vice President Joe Biden was willing to provide the video message for this evening. And that beautiful line of Irish poetry he quoted, "Making hope and history rhyme," is an obligation that is shared by all of us who serve the public. In the Senate, I've been honored to serve with such outstanding Irish American women as Maria Cantwell, Elizabeth Dole, and Lisa Murkowski. I know that sounds Polish, but she has an Irish mother. But since we Irish love stories, I want to tell you two stories about another great friend of mine who's no longer with us, so he can't contradict what I say. But that is my dear friend, Ted Kennedy. I was a freshman senator when I had to go to the Senate floor and debate the lion of the Senate, Ted Kennedy. So, needless to say, I was a nervous wreck about doing this. I studied, I worked, as both Sam and David could attest, and I did all my homework, and then went to the floor to debate Ted. And Ted roared, as he was known to do, made his arguments, and I would counter each one that he made. Afterwards, Ted came over, clapped me on the back, and with that big laugh of his said, "You know, I didn't know what I was talking about." That is a true story. And he said, "You really did a very good job." And that was Ted Kennedy. And let me tell you a second Ted Kennedy story. He once told me on the Senate floor that he wanted my mother to have a copy of his mother's memoir, which was called Times to Remember. And he told me it was out of print and he only had very few copies left. And he said, "You know, I'd like to inscribe it to your mother. So could you write down her name?" So I dutifully wrote down Patricia, Rosaline, Catherine, McGuigan, Collins. Well, you can imagine when he read that, how hard he laughed. And the next day, sure enough, delivered to my office was the book inscribed to Patricia, Rosaline, Catherine, McGuigan, Collins. And that was Ted Kennedy. And those were the days when, regardless of which party you belonged to in the Senate, you still had these personal relationships that transcended party lines. And Ted was one of those who believed in the institution of the Senate, just as I do. Our first Irish-American president, John Kennedy, once said that civility is not a sign of weakness. The Irish brand of civility is a sign of strength that is needed today more than ever. The Irish have given so much to America, and we have given back. Last year, the people of Ireland commemorated the centennial of the Easter Rising that led to a free and independent Republic of Ireland. At the 1916 Garden of Remembrance ceremony in Western Massachusetts, the Consul General, who was here earlier tonight, offered these words. Irish patriots were inspired by the example of America's 1776 revolution. They drew from the Declaration of Independence, and America provided rescue for those who were persecuted. Our ancestral ties and shared values are the foundation of the enduring relationship between Ireland and America. If peace is the natural result of trade, that foundation grows ever stronger. We are Ireland's top market for exports and are second only to the United Kingdom in imports. But being Irish American isn't all about drinking imported Irish whiskey or eating corned beef and drinking Guinness. Not that there's anything wrong with all of that. As the beneficiaries of a great culture, we are called upon to honor and build upon the accomplishments and contributions of our forebears. The most precious Irish export to our shores is the courageous, hard-working, good people who left their homeland to build a new nation. The Maine Irish Heritage Center is more than just a beautiful and historic building that once was a wonderful Catholic church. It is the steward of the story of the Irish in Maine. It is the inspiring story of a place where all were welcome and where all worked together to build something great and lasting. Let me end my remarks by quoting my favorite Irish blessing. You saw in the video the needlepoint that my mother made for me many years ago. 1981 it was. And it has hung in every home in which I've lived, and now is in my home in Bangor. And I brought it with me tonight, not only to show you what wonderful work my mother could do, but to read my favorite Irish blessing to you. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rains fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of your hand, of his hand. So until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Patricia Collins, and she'll be coming up with the senator's husband and her brother to make the award of the Claddagh to the senator.
Thank you, Pat. And while they're doing that, I also want to do a shout out to all my friends from BIW who are here this evening who have been spotting. Thank you for coming too. Thank you.
Good job, Susan.
Oh, how beautiful. Thank you.
That's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Thank
Susan,
you.
You did a good job. We're all proud.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And we'd like to close this evening by singing When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, and we've drafted Pat Callahan to come up and help us because the singer we had lined up, I have to admit, got sick.
I think his name was Bushmills. I have to say one thing. I have to echo what Dave Flanagan said when Senator Collins says something troubles her, that it means much more than that. It reminds me of the fact that when anyone can tell you to go to hell, but when an Irishman says it, he'll say it so nicely you'll enjoy the trip. And Senator Collins mentioned Ted Kennedy, who loved the state of Maine, loved to come to Maine, liked to sail off the coast, to the point where when Senator Collins was in one of her re-election campaigns, he refused to dock in Camden. He was afraid a reporter might catch up to him and make him go on record and speak against her as a big-time Democrat. He wouldn't do it. So, So in any case, I need a Wellahan up here because I can't do this alone. I hate to follow Ted Kennedy. I believe the last time Ted Kennedy was in Maine was when he was campaigning for Barack Obama, and he sang, as he always did, "When Irish Eyes Are Smiling." So what do you say?
Well, why don't we do it, Pat?
Why not? All right, everyone can join in. When Irish eyes are smiling, sure it's like a morning spring. In the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the angels sing. When Irish hearts are happy, all the world seems bright and gay. But when Irish eyes are smiling, sure they'll steal your heart away. Everybody join in. Come on. No holding back. When Irish eyes are smiling, sure it's like a morning spring. In the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the angels sing. When Irish hearts are happy, all the world seems bright and gay. But when Irish eyes are smiling, sure they'll steal your heart away. Harmony.
Thank you,
Thank you all so much for coming. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you.